Next witness.
State calls Curtis Wright.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, so help me God.
Thank you.
And then push your chair forward. When you speak, speak into this mic, please.
Okay.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you please state your full name for the record?
It's Curtis Wayne Wright, Jr.
Junior?
Yes.
And can you please spell your last name?
Wright.
And you're a little soft-spoken, so can you lean forward as best you can? I don't know if that's a movable mic up there. Maybe move it a little closer.
You can undo one of his cuffs if you want. Sure.
Thank you. This better?
Okay. Mr. Wright, who killed Dr. Teresa Sievers?
I did, and Jimmy Rodgers.
All right. Let's go back to the end, or go back to the beginning. Mr. Wright, where were you born?
St. Louis, Missouri.
How old are you, sir?
51.
51? What's your education? Your educational level?
College.
Did you finish college?
No, I didn't.
How far did you get?
I wasn't in a degree program, so I was taking independent classes, so I'm not really sure how to answer that.
So you never actually got far enough along to earn a college degree, sir?
No, the vocation that I ended up deciding to go into at the time didn't have a degree.
Do you have any family?
I do.
Let's start first with, are you married?
I am.
How long have you been married?
6 years.
When did you get married?
I'm sorry, 5.
5 years? When did you get married?
May 2nd, 2015.
So just over, it's 2019 now, so just over 4 years?
Yes, sorry.
Was that your first marriage?
No,
How many times have you been married?
3.
3 times?
Yes,
Do you have any children?
I do.
How many?
3.
A little nervous?
I am. I'm a little hoarse, sorry.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your past, Mr. Wright. Have you ever been convicted of a felony?
I have.
How many times?
I'm not sure exactly. I have 3 drug possession charges, and then there was another one that had to do with, it was part of the same thing.
3 or 4 times?
Yeah, I'm not positive of the number, but yeah,
Definitely more than 1,
yes,
and 5 or less.
yes,
You said just now that you and Jimmy Rodgers killed Teresa Sievers. Is that what you're in custody for right now?
yes it is.
Mr. Wright, did you enter a substantial assistance plea agreement with the state of Florida regarding your testimony?
Yes, I did.
And are you expecting to receive some benefit from the state of Florida in exchange for your testimony?
I agreed to a 25-year sentence.
Have you been sentenced yet?
No.
Is your sentence contingent upon anything?
Me telling the truth.
What happens to that sentence if you don't tell the truth?
It goes away. I know the maximum for what the charge is that is a life, so I would assume that I would be put away for the rest of my life.
Now, Mr. Wright, let's go back to July of 2015. Did you receive some visits from members of law enforcement, actually we'll say between July and October of 2015, did you receive some visits from law enforcement to get some information from you about Dr. Sievers' death?
Yes.
In Missouri?
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm very bad with time
No problem.
frames. So.
And did you provide prior recorded statements to law enforcement?
Yes.
And you provided those prior statements to law enforcement regarding this case, the case involving the death of Dr. Sievers?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell them the truth?
No.
Why didn't you?
I was trying to protect myself and my co-defendants. Tried to derail them on their investigation.
When you said you were trying to protect yourself and your co-defendants, who were your co-defendants?
Jimmy Rodgers and Mark Sievers.
So you lied to law enforcement to evade arrest?
Attempted to, yes.
Well, you didn't attempt to lie, you did lie, right?
Attempted to not get arrested.
And that part didn't work.
Right.
So then after you got arrested, you hired counsel.
Yes.
And at some point, did you make a decision to make a proffer to the state about what you might testify to in this case?
I did. I actually want to, on the last question that you asked me, I actually hired counsel in Missouri prior to being arrested.
And then when you got to Florida, you obtained counsel in Florida.
Yes.
Okay, and we'll talk about, I'm specifically referring, thanks for correcting me, I'm specifically referring to your Florida counsel. And made a decision to engage the state and brought a proffer.
Yes.
And was that the first time you and I met?
Yes, I believe it was.
And at some point during that proffer, we had a discussion about your involvement in this. Apologize, Judge. Apparently there was a distraction in the courtroom.
I'll ask everybody to turn off any electronic devices that you have in the courtroom, or you'll have to remove yourself. You may continue.
So I think I was asking whether that proffer was the first time you and I had ever met.
Yes, I believe it was.
And the purpose, what was the purpose of that proffer?
to try to work out, see if there was an arrangement that we could make that where I could offer information to you that would help.
So you wanted to offer information and in exchange for us possibly offering to make a deal with you?
Yes, possibility.
Did you tell the truth in the proffer?
Not all of it.
You started out telling untruths.
Well, I started out telling the truth. In the middle, varied a little. Got off, and then at the end, I corrected those.
Did you correct that on your own, or did somebody help you make that correction?
We took a break. I spoke to my counsel, and I prayed.
Now, at the time you were giving that proffer, you had been arrested.
Yes.
You were actually in jail awaiting your trial on the charges, right?
Yes.
And during that meeting that you had with your counsel, did you get educated on what the purpose of the proffer was?
Yes.
After that meeting with your counsel, did you tell the truth in the proffer?
Yes, I did.
And then you probably don't know that there were discussions, but at some point did the state then make you the 25-year offer?
Yes, sometime after that.
And after, did you eventually accept the offer
I did.
and then provide a sworn statement to the state?
Yes.
Did you tell the truth then?
Yes.
Mr. Wright, do you know Mark Sievers?
I do.
How do you know him?
We've been friends since high school.
And so in high school, you were somewhere between the ages of 14 and 18?
Yes, I can't remember if it was 9th or 10th grade that we met, but we've maintained a friendship throughout the years.
How did you meet?
Our girlfriends were friends. I believe that's how we originally got.
And these were high school girlfriends?
Yes.
How would you describe your relationship with Mr. Sievers?
Well, it's been a long period of time. You mean currently, or?
I wouldn't say, I'm guessing you're not currently, but I
Well-
would say before you got arrested.
Yes, that's what I meant.
How would you describe your relationship with Mr. Sievers?
We were good friends. We've been through a lot together over the years.
Did you have the kind of friendship with Mr. Sievers where you would confide in him?
Yeah, sometimes. Mark's personality, he's a pretty guarded person. So there were periods when there was very little really personal stuff talked about, but there was. And I knew that I could talk to him and he could talk to me.
And would the two of you keep secrets for one another?
I'm sorry, did you say for or from?
Well, I guess it could be either way. But the question was, would the two of you keep secrets for one another? So would you keep a secret from Mr. Sievers, and would he keep one for you?
Yes.
So you had the kind of relationship with Mr. Sievers where you could tell him something in confidence and not expect to hear it from somebody else.
Yes.
And Mr. Sievers could tell you something in confidence and you wouldn't tell somebody else.
Yes.
Did you know Mr. Sievers' family?
Yes.
His wife,
Yes.
Dr. Sievers.
Yes.
Had you met her before?
I met her when at their wedding. Mark is from St. Louis also. So when he moved down to Florida, I met her at the wedding, and then I didn't see her again for 10 years at least. So I didn't have a relationship with her, a friendship with her, but we had met. I knew who she was.
So Mr. Sievers invited you to the wedding between him and Dr. Sievers?
Yes.
Did you ever have an opportunity to meet the rest of the Sievers family?
Yes.
The two daughters? Did you meet them?
Josie and Carmi, yes.
Did you ever have an opportunity to spend time with the Sievers family?
Yes. The majority of the time that I spent with the family was with Mark and the girls. The majority of, well, all but one time that I can think of that I was with them, Teresa wasn't.
Now, at some point, I guess the next question would be: you said that you were very close friends. Did your friendship with Mr. Sievers stay consistent from the time you met up until June of 2015?
Well, our friendship stayed consistent. The level of interaction between us changed.
Did the fact that you got married and started a family, and he got married and started his family, have an effect on your friendship?
I don't think that's what affected it. I think it was him in Florida and me in St. Louis was what really affected it. We got married almost the same time, and we had our kids at the same time within a few months of each other.
So even though you still considered Mr. Sievers a close friend, you weren't in contact as much as you used to be.
Right. We talked on the phone occasionally. He would come into town, and he always had the girls with him when he came into town, and we'd always get together. Whenever I'd come to Florida, I would try to spend time with him too.
At some point, did you also develop a business relationship with Mark Sievers?
Yes.
And what was with reference to the Sievers medical practice, what was the nature of the business relationship with Mark Sievers?
Their medical practice, their software that they use for the patient management system, they have support for that. And the company that was providing their technical support, they weren't happy with. Mark asked me if I could help him because that was something that I've done a lot of in my past. So I told him that I would help him, and I did. Eventually, they got rid of the other company completely, and I officially took it over.
And so you had some experience doing tech support, computer services in the past?
Yes.
And when did this business relationship with Mark Sievers and the Sievers medical practice start, if you can recall?
I'm not sure exactly. I think it's not from now, but prior to 2015, I think it was about 3 years.
And did you perform services, the computer support services for the Sievers medical practice for free?
I did it first. Mark insisted that if I was going to do it, that he wanted it to be compensated. So.
And so at some point you started being paid to do the work for the Sievers practice?
Yes.
Did you received payments from Mark Sievers, or did you receive payments from the medical practice?
I think all of the payments came through the business, but they may not have. Our agreement wasn't in writing. It wasn't a contract. It was verbal.
Well, a verbal agreement can be a contract too, right?
No, yes. I mean, formal is what I meant.
In fact, was there an agreement between you and Mr. Sievers on how much you were going to get paid to perform the computer work for the medical practice?
Yeah, the agreement was about $100 a month.
So about $1,200 a year?
Yes.
Do you know Jimmy Rodgers?
I do.
How do you know him?
We're also friends.
Were you and Jimmy Rodgers have the same kind of friendship as you and Mark Sievers?
No.
Was your friendship with Jimmy Rodgers closer or less close than the friendship you had with Mark Sievers?
I was closer to Mark. Jimmy and I had a more steady, I guess, level of friendship. We talked and saw each other more.
And how far did how far? Let me ask a better question. Did Mr. Rodgers live in Missouri with you as well?
He did.
And so was it because he was did he live in the same county as you?
I think it was a different county, but it was just below me. Yeah, we were close together.
You were nearby?
Yeah.
Would that make it easier for the two of you to have a friendship?
It made it more convenient for us to get together.
How did you meet Jimmy Rodgers? Well, actually, no. Let me strike that question. Were you and Jimmy Rodgers friends?
Yes, I believe so.
Would you confide in Mr. Rodgers?
Not in the same kinds of things that I would with Mark.
And that's because, as you told us earlier, you were closer with Mark Sievers than you were with Jimmy Rodgers.
Yeah, I think that kind of relationship takes time to build.
Now, you said earlier that you were, 51?
Yes.
Is Mr. Rodgers also 51?
No.
A little younger than you?
A little bit.
Back in around the time of May of 2015, did Mr. Rodgers have a girlfriend?
Yes.
Had you met her?
You said May, right?
In May, around May of
Yes.
2015? Had you met his girlfriend?
Yes.
Did you know who she was?
Yes.
What was her name?
Taylor Schumacher.
I think you told me a minute ago that you had been married, been married 3 times.
Yes.
Is your current marriage your 3rd marriage, or is it your 4th marriage?
No, it's my 3rd.
Okay. And when did that marriage start?
May 2nd.
Of 2015?
Yes, I'm sorry.
And did you actually have a wedding?
Yes.
And what kind of wedding was it? Was it one of those big formal weddings with big gowns and tuxedos, or was it a less formal wedding?
It was less formal. We actually had an outdoor wedding at a park.
And did you invite your longtime friend, Mark Sievers, to come to your wedding?
Yes.
Now, was he just supposed to come to the wedding, or did he have any specific duties at the wedding?
Actually, I invited the family, so, but Mark's the one that came up. And yes, he was. I had 2 best men. He was one of them.
So, Mr. Mark Sievers was the best man at your wedding?
Yes.
And thanks for correcting me. You invited the Sievers family to come to the wedding.
Yes. I'd sent an invitation.
Do you know? So did Mark Sievers actually come to Missouri for the wedding?
Yes, he did.
And back then, what part of Missouri did you live in?
Hillsboro.
And Hillsboro is a city?
Yeah, if you want to call it a city. Yeah, it's actually the county seat, but it's very small.
And what county is it in?
Jefferson County.
And as is customary with a wedding, were there any associated wedding festivities that weekend for your wedding?
Yes.
And what kind of festivities were there?
We all got together the day before the wedding at my house, and we had a cookout, and then that evening we had a combined bachelorette party, but we all went out together to a karaoke bar.
And when you say we, who is we? Well, let me ask
Just-
you.
just
let me ask,
a
let me
group
stop
of friends.
you and ask you a smarter question, because that wasn't a very smart question. When you say we, up to this point, we've talked about yourself, we've talked about Mark Sievers, we've talked about Jimmy Rodgers, and we've talked about Taylor Showmaker.
Yes.
Were any of them present at the wedding festivities?
All of them.
You mentioned that there was a cookout at your house.
Yes.
Were Mr. Rodgers, Miss Taylor, Mr. Sievers present there?
Yes.
To your knowledge, had Mr. Sievers and Mr. Rodgers ever met before?
No, they had not actually met prior to that.
Did you ever see them associate or exchange pleasantries during the wedding festivities?
There was a lot going on. I think everybody talked to everybody, so specifically I can't remember an actual conversation, but
Well, how big was this cookout?
10 people.
So it wasn't like hundreds of people.
No.
And then you said that there was a combined bachelorette party that night.
Yes.
And you said something about going out. What do you mean? What did you mean when you say you went out and had the combined bachelorette party?
It was, I could be missing a person or two, but I believe it was the same group that was at the house. We all went out.
Was it to like a
Yeah,
establishment of some kind?
Yes, it was a karaoke bar. My wife sings.
And I'm guessing if you were at a karaoke bar, the genre sounds like it describes what y'all were doing there, singing and drinking.
Yes.
And was Mr. Rodgers there?
Yes,
Was Mr. Sievers there?
he was.
Was Miss Showmaker there?
Yes. If I can add something to that.
Well, let me just ask you another question.
Okay.
Okay. So how soon after the wedding festivities, the bachelorette party, how soon after that was the actual wedding?
It was the next morning. That same group of people, we all stayed at my house that night so that we could all be together in the morning. The wedding was started at noon, so, and because it was in the park, there was a lot of things that had to be set up. I got chairs and tables from our church, and we had bought the meat through a friend of mine's little grocery store, and so that had to be picked up. There was, things that needed to be done. We had planned on meeting back over at the bar. I'm sorry, at the park about 9 o'clock that morning.
Okay, and so let me back up to spending the night at your at your place.
Yes,
Mr. Rodgers spent the night
yes,
at your place. Miss Showmaker spent the night as well,
yes,
and Mr. Sievers spent the night.
yes.
Did Mr. Sievers stay at your place during his entire visit in Hillsborough or Jefferson County, Missouri during that time?
No,
He stayed somewhere else?
yes.
Where did he stay?
I'm not sure exactly what day he flew in, but I know that the entire day before we got together, he spent at his he owns a condominium up there, and that he's had rented out. Still has a lot of things stored in the garage from life. So
So if your wedding was you said May 2nd,
yes,
and then so that means that the festivities would have been on May 1st.
yes, Friday night.
And so if it was the day before the festivities, it would have been what? There's 30 days in April. Is it 30 or 31 days in April? I think it's 30 days in April. Would have been April 30th, whatever the last day in April is.
Okay.
Okay. Should have looked at a calendar before I asked that question. During the when everybody spent the night at your place, the night before the wedding, did Ms. Showmaker, Mr. Rodgers, and Mr. Sievers appear to associate at all? Have any discussion?
Yeah, everybody was talking, so
You didn't observe a friendship develop between Mr. Sievers and Mr. Rodgers during that weekend, though, did you?
no.
At some point during the weekend festivities, did Mr. Sievers approach you about something?
Yes.
And how did he approach you?
Well, right before he came into town, he sent me a text message telling me that he had something personal that he wanted to talk to me about. He didn't tell me what it was, but he said that he'd hoped that we could have some time to talk while he was in town. So,
And let me stop there and let me back up for a minute. At the beginning of our discussion, you told me that you and bless you and Jimmy Ray Rodgers killed Dr. Sievers.
yes,
But you also mentioned that Mr. Sievers was a co-defendant.
yes.
Did Dr. Sievers die as a result of something Mr. Sievers did?
Yeah. He approached me and told me that he needed to have his wife killed. And
Overruled.
Ask for instruction.
You can approach.
state.
May I proceed?
Yes, sir.
All right, so did Mr. Sievers, I think where we were was I was asking if Mr. Sievers asked to speak with you at the wedding.
Yeah, the night before the wedding, yes.
And how did he ask to speak with you?
Well, he sent me a text message before he came in town to let me know that he wanted to talk to me. Once he got to the house, the day before the wedding, when we all had our get together at the house.
And before we get to the day before the wedding, let me back up to the text message, okay?
Okay.
In the text message that he sent you, did he tell you why he wanted to speak to you?
He just said it was something personal, but I can't remember the way it was worded.
Now, did he ever actually get an opportunity to speak with you?
Yes.
And you started to tell us about the next day at the house.
Yes.
Did he speak to you then?
Yeah, at some point after he got to the house, he asked me if we could go somewhere and talk privately. We went back to my bedroom and closed the door so that we could have some privacy.
So even though you had people visiting and celebrating you and Mrs. Wright getting married, the two of you went off on your own to talk about whatever it was Mr. Sievers wanted to talk to you about.
Yes.
Did that discussion between you and Mr. Sievers, was that the beginning of an agreement between you and Mr. Sievers to result in the death of Dr. Sievers?
I'm not sure how to answer that, but
Yes or
it
no?
was the beginning of the conversations that led to the agreement.
So that discussion, it's safe to say, began a series of discussions between you and Mr. Sievers that resulted in the death of Dr. Sievers.
Yes.
At some point, was there an agreement between you and Mr. Sievers? Was there an agreement between you and Mr. Sievers to cause the death of Dr. Teresa Sievers?
Did you say at that point?
At some point.
Yes.
Was there ever an agreement between you and Jimmy Rodgers to cause the death of Dr. Sievers?
Yes.
And did you make that agreement with Jimmy Rodgers as a result of your discussions with Mark Sievers?
Yes.
So going back to, getting back to your wedding, or your wedding weekend, you've got folks over at your house, you're having a party, and you said you and Mr. Sievers were somewhere else in the house.
Yes, in the
Where were
bedroom.
you?
In the bedroom. My bedroom specifically. Or
Just
our.
the two of you?
Yes.
And did Mr. Sievers tell you what he wanted to talk to you about?
Yes.
What did he tell you? What did he tell you he wanted to know?
Well, he wanted to tell me that he and Teresa were having problems, that Teresa was having an affair, and that talked about some financial problems they were having as well. Told me that he thought that they may have to file bankruptcy, and my impression is that he didn't really have anybody else he could talk to. So,
What was his demeanor like as he was telling you about these problems he was having at home? How did he appear?
Objection, Your Honor. Outside the scope of any conspiracy.
Overruled.
How did he appear as he was telling you about his problems at home?
sincere. I mean, he was not his normal upbeat self.
So, when your friend of so many years was telling you that he was having these problems at home, did you believe what he was telling you?
Yes.
What else did he tell you during that meeting between the two of you in the bedroom at your home?
Besides the problems that they were having, he told me that Mark likes to use the hypothetical situations when he wants to say something without.
Your Honor.
Overruled.
So he brought up a
Let
hypothetical.
me stop and ask the question, ask a question again so we can, so let me back up. I think the question I was asking was, what was it, Mr. Sievers, after he told you he was having problems at home, what else did he ask you for? What else did he tell you?
He told me that he used the hypothetical situation as a way to bring it up, but he said that if a hypothetical situation existed where someone's children were going to be taken away and that they were in danger, that if I knew somebody that could help him.
So, just to be clear, he asked you hypothetically if there was somebody whose children were going to be taken away. Did you, Mr. Wright, know somebody who could help him?
Yes.
Help him how?
He didn't say specifically, but my take on it was, maybe go rough this guy up or something. Run him off.
And did he actually ask you to rough up anybody?
He just said take care of it or help him. So our conversation got interrupted right about that point, so it wasn't a full conversation.
So at that conversation, he gave you this hypothetical situation, but he didn't yet ask you to do something.
Right, not directly.
And how did you said your conversation got interrupted. How did it get interrupted?
People were wondering where we went because we disappeared, and so they started knocking on the door looking for us, and so we went back out and joined the party.
And so when you say people started wondering where you went, it was all of your guests that were there at your party that night
Yes.
or that day.
Yeah, this all happened during like an afternoon and went into the evening.
So was that the last time you talked to Mr. Sievers about whatever his problems might have been at home,
No.
hypothetically?
No.
Was there another discussion?
Yes.
When?
The next morning, when we all were at the park getting ready, Mark and I ended up had some time alone again. I think we were actually getting dressed or something, but
Where did you get dressed?
there's like a building there at the park. I think the restrooms are in that building, but it's also got some other stuff in it. It wasn't just a bathroom, but we were getting dressed, or getting ready, and he brought it back up again.
So, on the day of your wedding, while you're getting ready for your wedding, Mr. Sievers wanted to talk to you again about whatever his problems were.
Yes, prior to the ceremony, right.
And if I could ask Madam Clerk to assist me, please, with State's Exhibit number 74A through E.
You can approach.
Thank you.
A through D, and then F, and then I have F. but there's no E.
Okay. Those are what I want.
Mr. Wright, did you hire was there somebody taking pictures at your wedding festivities?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been previously entered into evidence as Exhibit 74A. You recognize that?
Yes.
What is it?
That's a picture of, I think, the exact situation I was just talking about.
That's the two of you getting dressed at your wedding?
Yeah, unless it's one of us looking in a mirror.
Two of you look pretty close. The two of you look, I'm not going to say look alike, but you look very similar in that picture.
Yes.
It almost does look like a mirror, doesn't it? Which one is you and which one is Mr. Sievers?
I think I'm the one on the right.
Okay, so the one with his tie getting tied is you?
Yes.
And so the one tying your tie is Mark Sievers?
Yes. Is that a striped tie around my neck?
Yeah, it looks like a striped tie there.
Yeah, that's me
Actually,
then.
I can show you the picture a little
No,
closer
that's
so you can
it.
see.
Yeah, that's me.
That's you with the tie on?
Yes. We were dressed identical except for the tie. That's
Now, you said there were some folks at your wedding. Can you see who these two people are? Can you see them? I can zoom it in for you.
yes.
Who are these two people?
That's Jimmy Rodgers and Taylor Schumacher.
And this picture is also taken at your wedding?
Yeah, it looks like that's taken at the park.
Thank you. All right, so you're in that little room in the park getting dressed for your wedding, and Mr. Sievers wants to talk to you again. What did he tell you?
That morning, I don't know if I made that clear or not, but the night before when we talked, he told me that she was having an affair, but he didn't actually tell me she was leaving him. So that next morning when the conversation continued, it went more into depth. He actually told me that she was leaving him for another doctor, I think is what he said there. Who he was.
Did he tell you a name?
I don't know. I don't remember if he did.
Did you know who he was talking about? Who this person was that she was supposedly having an affair with?
No. I think he said that it was somebody that she met at a conference or something.
And was he still speaking hypothetically about something happening?
No.
What else did he tell you while speaking at the park? Specifically at the park.
Well, he told me that she was basically that the decision had been made that they were going to split up, and that she was taking the kids and leaving state with them.
And you mentioned earlier Josie and Carmi. So Mr. Sievers was telling you that Dr. Sievers was going to leave him and take his daughters.
Yes.
When he told you this, did you believe him?
Yeah, Mark doesn't joke around about things like that. Especially not with his girls.
What else did you discuss with him during this particular discussion at the park, if anything?
I think there was some like options thrown out there, a couple things. Some of I get, because it was one conversation, sometimes I get mixed up on the details between part A and part B, but same conversation, and it's all true. But, But I had mentioned that, about fighting her for custody, legally fighting her. He said he didn't have the finances to do that. That there's no way that he could keep the girls from their mother. In there somewhere, we also mentioned counseling, and he said, I think he said they had already done counseling, or they had already talked about it.
Okay, so that sounds like some reasonable advice from a friend. Fight, do counseling or have a fight for custody of your children. That sounds reasonable.
I thought so.
Did Mr. Sievers agree to take your advice?
Well, he said he couldn't fight her financially, and that the counseling didn't work out.
And what else did he tell you while at the park?
He told me that not only was she taking them, but they were going to be in danger. That without him there to protect them. There was multiple times that we discussed danger that they were in, but he never told me specifically what it was. But I know Mark, and when Mark says something like that, he's serious.
So Mr. Sievers gave you the impression when you say they were going to be in danger.
I'm sorry.
Was it the daughters, Josie and Carmi, or was it Josie, Carmi, and Dr. Sievers?
No, just the girls, the children.
Did he ask you to do anything during this discussion at the park?
It seems like he asked me again about if I knew somebody that might be able to help him out with it. Again, the discussion got interrupted right about that point, so it didn't wrap up on a finished note.
Oh, what kind of did he tell you? Was he asking for help getting marriage counseling? Was he asking for help getting legal representation for a custody battle? What kind of help was he asking? Did he ask for the name of a lawyer? What was he asking for?
He was asking for somebody to pay this guy a visit.
The guy who Dr. Sievers was
Having the affair with.
supposedly having an affair with.
Yes.
And I'm guessing it wouldn't have been a friendly visit.
No.
All right, so at some point did the discussion in the room, in the men's room, or whatever this room was where you and Mr. Sievers were, did that discussion end?
Yeah, because it got interrupted again.
I'm guessing at this point now, since the two of you are apparently getting dressed, there were wedding associated activities about to begin.
Yeah, it was getting close. The chairs were there, and things were getting set up. The organization part of trying to make it all happen, because we got married in the gazebo, so that had to be decorated and things. We had a lot of chairs. There was a lot of people there. So they.
Well, let me stop you and ask you, who did the decorating?
Friends.
You didn't hire a company to come and do the decorating?
No.
Kind of try to keep costs down?
We pulled everybody together, and everybody joined in. Her friends helped with more of the decorating. Mine helped more with setting things up.
And when you say her friends, you mean your wife?
I'm sorry. Yes, Angie.
Angie Wright?
Yes,
Who did the catering?
we did.
And when you say we, you mean you and Mrs. Wright?
Yes. I have a friend. Is this what you're asking me? I'm sorry.
I'm just
Okay.
the better
How it
question
came
was,
about.
How did y'all get food for the wedding?
Okay. I have a friend who owns a small grocery mart with a deli in it. He let me use his wholesale food account to buy everything that we needed. he didn't buy it for us. I bought it just using his wholesale account. He also was nice enough to let me store these boxes of meat. We had multiple cases of hot dogs and hamburgers and all, whatever else we were going to eat. So he let us keep it in his cooler as well as let us buy it through him.
And what kind of cooler did he have that enabled you to be able to store boxes of meat, hot dogs, burgers, and other stuff in it?
It was a big walk-in cooler like a restaurant has. I think the front side of it is actually where you open the doors to get soda and stuff out of, and then the back is all, storage.
And is this cooler located in some kind of a business?
Yes, it's inside of his little mart, his little store. It's called Neighborhood Grocery, is the actual name of the store.
So since he's a grocer, he had access to being able to buy food at wholesale,
Yes.
and he let you benefit from his wholesale discount.
Yeah, he gave me his card and told me to go get whatever I needed. We paid for it then.
Now, is the neighborhood grocery or neighborhood grocer, is that near the park where your wedding was?
I live out in the country, so near to me is probably different than near to most people.
Well,
It's about 20 minutes.
And by Florida standards, let me back up and clarify my use of the word near. Can you walk from neighborhood? Is it a short walk from neighborhood grocery to the park where your wedding was?
No. It was about a 20-minute drive.
And by Hillsborough standards, a 20-minute drive is near.
It's almost to the nearest fast food restaurant.
So the food that was in your friend's cooler was supposed to be used in your wedding at the park.
Yes.
How was the food going to get from the wedding to the park?
When we left the house that morning,
Or how was the food supposed to get from the neighborhood grocer to the wedding at the park?
that morning when we left the house everybody got together at the park, I made the detour over to the grocery store to pick up the meat on the way to the park. I had a friend that was helping, so we picked the meat up and then joined everybody else at the park.
And when you got to the park, did you realize that you had all of the meat?
Well, when we got to the park, I thought we had it all. That was the reason for the interruption in our conversation where we were getting dressed, was that they couldn't find a whole case of hot dogs, which is the first thing they were going to put on the grill. We also had a pavilion that was set up for eating and all of that. We have a friend who always does all the cooking. He has his own smoker and all that stuff for any kind of gatherings that we have. So the idea was that they were going to get the food on while the ceremony was going on, so that it would all be ready after.
Okay. So, your conversation with Mr. Sievers is interrupted because it's realized that there's some meat missing.
Yes.
Does somebody need to go get that meat?
Yeah. The first thing I did was I called TK, is my friend's name. The owner.
This is the friend with the grocery store?
Yes, the owner of the grocery. And so I called him to find out if it was there, if somehow it got left. He went in and checked, and he told me that it was there. So the next decision was who's going to go get it. Mark, I was with Mark when I made these phone calls, and he suggested that he take me over. I didn't have my car there. He had a rental from when he come into town. He offered to drive me back over to TK's to pick up that meat.
And so did Mr. Sievers, in fact, drive you to pick up the meat?
Yes.
Did anybody go with you?
It was just he and I.
In his rental car?
Yes.
And you said it was about, you said that the grocery store where the meet was about 20 minutes away from the park?
Yes.
And I'm guessing once you get to the grocery store and pick up the meat, it's another 20-minute drive back to the park?
Yeah. It's
So you
15.
had at least 40 minutes alone with Mr. Sievers?
Yes.
So during the drive to the store to pick up the meat, was there another discussion about his problems, his marital problems?
Yes, the conversation the ongoing conversation continued again once we got in the car.
And what was the conversation? What was the conversation about as you drove to pick up the missing case of hot dogs?
No, he brought up the fact again that he had no other choices. I made some different, offered some suggestions, really kind of the same ones over again, but he said that there was no other options. He didn't have any other options to protect his daughters than to have Teresa killed.
So, in the previous discussion at the park, you said you thought Mr. Sievers wanted to have whoever this person was who was having an affair with Dr. Sievers roughed up. But now, during the ride to pick up the hot dogs, he says that he has no choice but to have his wife killed.
Yes. He said the only option that he had was for her to die, and then he said, I need to have her killed.
Well, why is he telling you this? Let me ask a better question. Why was he telling you that he needed to have his wife killed?
He was asking me to help him to either do it or to facilitate it getting done.
Okay, so on the day of your wedding, your best friend is asking you to help him kill the wife and mother of his children.
Yeah.
Did you agree to help him? Well, let me back up. What kind of help was he asking for?
He asked me to have her killed. So,
So, when you say have her killed, was he asking you to do it yourself or get somebody to do it for him?
either. He wanted me to take care of it, either to do it myself or find someone else, but he wanted me to be the in-between person so that there was no contact between him and if there was another person.
Did you agree to do it?
No,
Why not?
because it kind of caught me off guard. I didn't really know how to answer him. I left it with that I would see what I could do.
Did you give him any more advice at this point? Mark, don't kill your wife. Don't do it. Did you give him any more friendly advice at this point?
I'm sure that I asked him if that was really necessary, if he was sure, like that. I don't remember exactly what I said, but that would have been what would have come out of my mouth.
Now, at some point, based on what you've told us earlier, you made the decision to do what Mr. Sievers was asking you to do, right?
Yes.
And let me ask the next question. When did you make the decision to do it?
Well, the conversation in the car ended with, after I told him that I would see what I could do. He told me that we wouldn't be able to talk about the situation on our regular phones, just for privacy reasons, and that way there was no logs on it. He told me that when he got home, he was going to go to Walmart and buy an anonymous prepaid phone, throwaway phone, and wanted me to do the same thing.
Okay, and
I'm sorry, I didn't finish your answer, did I? So once those phones once he got home, he bought a phone and sent me the phone number. I sat on it for a couple of weeks because I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And then in that area, at that time, I went and talked to Mr. Rodgers.
Well, and before we get to your discussion with Mr. Rodgers, the final face-to-face discussion that weekend with Mr. Sievers about how he somehow needed his wife to die. That happened during the ride to and from the grocery store to pick up the missing meat.
Yes.
And during that discussion, he also came up with a plan for the two of you to have covert communications.
Yes.
Now, did you actually get married on May 2nd?
I did.
And after the wedding, did you run right out and buy that burner phone or that prepaid phone?
No.
Why not?
Because I still hadn't decided if I was going to be involved in it at all.
And now you started to tell us that at some point while making that decision, you had a discussion with Mr. Rodgers.
Yeah, I had come to the decision that I wasn't going to do it myself, that I didn't feel like I could do it myself or that I wanted to. So the next step was to see if I could find somebody that wanted to be involved. So at that point, I went and I talked to Mr. Rodgers. I drove to his house and we talked. So I brought up a situation where, because he's done other things where he's helped me with projects.
Let me stop you right there. Okay. During your discussion with Mr. Sievers, I mean, you didn't fix, at this point, you didn't fix their computers for free. Were you going to get somebody or either get somebody to kill Dr. Sievers or to kill Dr. Sievers for free?
No, I'm sorry. I actually skipped that part in the conversation. This all happened in the car along with the other choices. But when I told him I would see what I could do, I asked him, what kind of money was available. At that point, he told me that he had a lot of life insurance on her. He didn't tell me an amount, but he said a lot. He said that him and the girls would be well taken care of, and that he would pay, $100,000 or more to have it taken care of.
So, Mr. Sievers tells you that he was going to use some life insurance policy or policies to pay up to $100,000 for somebody to kill Dr. Sievers.
Yes, and he said that we'd have to wait to get paid for a few months until the insurance paid.
At this time, the state would enter into evidence as self-authenticating business records. Starting first with State's Exhibit number 62, self-authenticating business records from Prudential. State's Exhibit number State's Exhibit number 60.
You doing them one at a time, or?
I was going to do them all at one time.
I haven't seen the exhibit yet.
There you go. There you go.
previous objections made at prior motion are noted for the record, and the same ruling holds. And council's looking at, you started with 63, 62, what else do you have?
I have State's Exhibit number 62 for the record, authenticating business records from Prudential. State's Exhibit number 61, council's reviewing authenticating business records from State Farm Insurance. And State's Exhibit number 63, council's reviewing authenticating business records of Ohio National Insurance.
I believe all three were subject to a previous motion.
Yes, Your Honor.
objections are noted for the record, overruled, will show them admitted with the limitations given.
Okay, so, Mr. Sievers, I think we left off, Mr. Wright. Mr. Sievers said he had $100,000 from insurance to pay someone to kill his wife.
Yes.
And you mentioned then that at some point you had a discussion with Mr. Rodgers about this?
Yeah. When I first talked to Jimmy, I didn't tell him specifics about what it was. Just told him that I had an opportunity. He was still looking for a way to make money. Told him that it was something serious, and that it involved another person. But I didn't tell him any specifics about what it was yet.
All right, so you didn't tell Mr. Rodgers that this involved Mark Sievers, who he had met at your wedding festivities?
No.
At some point, did you ask Mr. Rodgers to move forward with a plan to kill Dr. Sievers?
Yes.
When did you ask him to do this?
Well, after it's not
We'll
a
get to that.
it's not a simple answer.
We'll get to it.
Okay.
When did you ask him to do it?
After Mark and I had started making the plans, I shared them with Jimmy, and
When,
I talked to him about what it was specifically before the planning, I guess, before I started sharing plans.
okay. Was it still May of 2015 when you asked Mr. Rodgers to help you go forward with this plan, or were we now into June of 2015?
The first conversation I had with him was on May 17th.
And why is May 17th, why does May 17th stand out to you?
Because I had not committed to Mark whether I was going to help him or not. I'm sorry, Mr. Sievers, about whether or not I was going to help him until after I talked to Jimmy. And then I still had not gotten my other phone, or the prepaid phone that Mark had talked about us getting to communicate. I still hadn't gotten that because I hadn't committed yet.
So let me stop you then. And so between May 2nd at your wedding, when Mr. Sievers came up with this plan of using the prepaid phones, and now May 17th, you still hadn't gotten your prepaid phone?
Right.
But during that same time interval, Mr. Sievers had gotten his phone and sent you the number for it.
Yeah, he got his, I think, the day after he got home. He went and got his. He had let me know that he had gotten it already, and that he mailed me the phone number. I think it was actually a wedding card that had the phone number on a piece of paper in it.
Now, you at the time, did you have your own cell phone?
Yes.
What was the phone number, if you can recall?
996-9581.
And what was the area code?
I'm sorry. 314.
And so you had your own phone and your own way of communicating with Mr. Sievers,
Yes.
but you wanted to keep your communications off book.
Yeah, that's what he said. He didn't want any communication about this done on our regular phones.
And on May 17th of 2015, did you then make a decision to get your own burner phone?
Yes.
Your prepaid phone? Why did you decide to get a prepaid phone on May 17th?
Because I had talked to Jimmy and got a commitment that he was going to help. So then I went ahead and I got the phone. I think it was on the way home from Jimmy's house, but it could have been the next day. But on the 17th, I got my phone, and I sent Mark a message letting him know that I got it. And
So, ask to hire Jimmy to do this for you, or did you ask Jimmy to help you do this?
Well, I guess it would be to help. I didn't want to actually commit the murder myself, but it's murder. So
So you, at this point, when you got the burner phone, you were all in on this plan?
yes,
Did you and Mr. Sievers then come up with some way of letting each other know that Mr. Sievers also had his own personal phone, right?
yes.
Do you remember the phone number for his personal phone?
It was a 314 area code as well, and the first three numbers were 239.
Okay. Does the 314-239-0173 sound familiar?
Yeah, that would be it.
So now you on the 17th of May, you both have two phones, at least, right?
Two, right?
So how would you know which phone that he was going to contact you on, or that you were going to contact him on?
We referred to those phones as our other phones. I've heard all kinds of terms since then, like burner phones and things like that, but I didn't know any of those terms, so we called them our other phones. So Mark had came up with the idea, that if we texted each other, because we didn't leave those other phones on, that if one of us needed to talk to the other about the situation, that we would send a message on our regular phones that included the word other, in order to let us know, hey, turn your phone on, I'm trying to call you, or call me. Or
So if you needed to talk to Mr. Sievers on his prepaid phone, you would send a message to that 239-0173 number, and the message would have to contain the word other in it somehow.
yeah, that's what we came up with.
And that was your signal to him for him to contact you on your prepaid phone.
Right.
And did the two of you actually exchange messages between each other, signaling one another to go and pick up your prepaid phone?
Yeah, quite a few times.
Did you tell Mr. Rodgers to get a prepaid phone?
No, I still hadn't told Jimmy that it was Mark, and Mark didn't want anybody else to know it was him, so I was the in-between person.
Did you tell Mr. Rodgers that you wanted him to help you kill somebody?
Yeah. Yes, at some point as it progressed, it was specific, yes.
So between May 17th of 2015 and June 28th of 2015, what did you with Mark Sievers discuss on these prepaid phones?
Mark came up with the initial, what he thought was would be the best plans. He came up with two. He said that the two places that he saw it happening would be either when she got off work at night, because the office building was kind of off the main path. He'd actually had me bring up some aerial photos from using Google Maps or Google Earth or something, and so that he could talk me through what he was talking about. But there's a side entrance to that main office, and then you have to walk up the side of the building to get to the parking lot where the car was parked. So he thought that would be a good place.
Did Mark Sievers at this time understand now that you had committed to being involved in this murder?
Yes.
So it wasn't you hiring somebody to do it for him. You were going to be involved.
Yes, I never told him that it was another person, or he told me that he didn't care. He just wanted me to have it taken care of.
So Mark Sievers didn't know that you had talked with Mr. Rodgers
No,
about helping you do this?
no,
And then Mark Sievers provided you with intelligence information on how you were going to get access to Dr. Sievers?
yes, there was a lot of thought put into it. Apparently, but
Did you pass on the information you were getting from Mr. Sievers on the possible ways for you to be able to get access to kill Dr. Sievers?
yeah, as kind of milestones happened in the planning process, I would share that with Jimmy and get some feedback.
Now, you and Mr. Rodgers are all the way up in Jefferson County and/or Washington County, Missouri.
Yes,
And Dr. Sievers and Mr. Sievers are all the way down here in Bonita Springs, Florida.
right.
So how were the two of you from all the way up there going to kill Dr. Sievers all the way down here?
We would have to make the trip down. The other option Mark had come up with was at the house, so both options were down here.
And the satellite pictures that he showed you or that he helped you look at on Google Maps were of the home in Bonita Springs
Yes,
and
and
also of the medical practice?
yes,
Was there, at this point now, in May of 2015, did you know when this
no,
murder was supposed to happen?
no. That was actually another thing that I had asked Mark was what kind of time frame that he was looking at. He just said as soon as possible. ASAP, I think, is the way he actually said it, but
Okay. Did you and Mr. Sievers ever decide on a time and place for when Dr. Sievers was supposed to die?
yes.
How did the two of you come up with this decision for when Dr. Sievers was supposed to die?
Mark made that decision and told me. I'm not sure when the trip got planned. They were going out of town to be with her family for I think it was a birthday party. And they were leaving on whatever day they left, Thursday or Friday night, or Thursday night. So they were going to be gone for the weekend. Teresa was coming home alone Sunday night, and Mark and the kids were staying an extra couple of days. Said he would be back on Wednesday. So he told me that was the target. It had to happen either Sunday night or Monday or Tuesday.
So you didn't know that the Sievers family was going to be out of town at this family celebration or whatever. You didn't know about that until Mr. Sievers told you?
Right.
And you didn't know that Dr. Sievers would potentially be coming home by herself until Mr. Sievers told you?
Right. He told me all of it at the same time.
How long before the family trip, was it days, weeks, or months before he told you, before the trip, that he told you that the trip was going to happen?
I'm not sure the exact time range, but it was a couple of weeks, somewhere in that neighborhood.
And did you pass along that information to Mr. Rodgers about when you'd need to be down here?
Yes.
How did you pass it along to him?
I talked to him. Most of the conversations that Jimmy and I had about this were in person. Mark made a big impression on me about not speaking about any of this on our phones. Jimmy didn't have a burner phone, so my conversations with him were in person. We would meet somewhere, or I'd come down to his house.
How long of a trip was it from your home to Mr. Rodgers' home?
20 minutes. Maybe a little bit longer, but about 20 minutes.
Okay, so now you know that that you've got to be by this point now, you know you have to be in Florida that weekend, at some point that weekend, that the Sievers family is out of town, right?
Yes.
Did you have a plan for how you were going to get here?
Well, driving down, because you can't fly without using your license and leaving a big trail, but so we were going to drive down. You're looking for more information?
No, so
Okay.
you were going to, the plan was to drive down to Florida to do it?
Yes.
And did you pass that information on to Mr. Rodgers?
Yes.
Did Mr. Rodgers appear to you, you said you spoke to him in person, did he appear to you to understand that you were asking him to come down here to kill a human being?
Objection to the form of the question.
Did he appear to understand?
Sustained.
Did you engage Mr. Rodgers in a conversation where you indicated to him that he was going to come down here to kill a human being?
Yes.
Did he respond to you when you told him this?
Yes.
Did he appear to understand what you were telling him?
Yes.
Speculation.
Overruled.
All right, so you're going to rent a car and drive down here. That costs money, right?
Yes. My car was actually, my wife wrecked my car, so my car ended up going in the shop. So that's how the rental car came about.
And so if we heard testimony that your personal car was in a repair shop of some kind, that was legitimately in the shop?
Yes.
So your car wasn't in the repair shop as part of this plan?
No. It was damaged pretty bad. It was drivable, but I wouldn't have trusted it to take on a trip, so.
And did you have money to rent a car?
No, I didn't have any extra money.
But you did in fact rent one?
Yes.
How did you do that?
When Mark told me the time period that he was looking at, I told him I didn't have the money to make the trip. So he mailed me some money.
Did he mail you $100,000?
No,
How much did he mail you?
600.
Did he mail you 600 in cash?
No, it was a check. He told me that he was going to make it appear as if it was a normal payment, so it didn't stand out for the work that I do.
So it was a check, a business check from the Sievers medical practice?
Yes.
And did you receive the check before you made the trip to Florida?
Yes.
And did you cash the check and get the money?
I cashed the check. I used 100 of it for the rental car and 500 for the trip.
And when you say you used 500 for the trip, what did you spend the money on during the trip?
Well, gas, food, did a little shopping, just whatever expenses that we had while we were down here, because we got here on Sunday morning, and this didn't happen till Sunday night, and we left that same night right from there. So we spent the day Sunday out, so we were eating and.
Okay, and did Mr. Rodgers know how you paid for the rent-a-car? Did you tell him?
Yes.
And you told him that you got money from the person who wanted you to kill Dr. Sievers?
Yes.
Did you ever tell Mr. Rodgers that it was in fact Mark Sievers?
At some point, yeah, he figured it out on his own, but we did have a discussion about it once that happened.
Did you spend any of the remaining $500 on Mr. Rodgers?
Yeah, it was spent on both of us. I mean, the one of the things we did besides the food and all of that paid for both of us, all of our expenses. We also,
Let me
Go
let me
ahead.
ask you a question first. Did he know that the money? Did you tell him that the money that you were using to pay for his expenses on that trip came from the money given to you to come down here and kill Dr. Sievers?
yes,
All right. So you rented a car to come down here. Was that what kind of car was it?
Hyundai, I think. I can't remember the model. I'm sorry.
And in June, actually, how many trips did you make to Florida?
Well, I made 2 trips, but the second trip I actually don't think it started till like July 1st or something. But
Not
yeah,
June 30th, but July 1st?
it could have been the 30th. That's why I'm not sure. It's
And whose vehicle or vehicles did you use to come during those 2 trips?
They were both rental cars.
And so you came down in one rental car and then got a different rental car to come back?
Yes.
Why did you come back the second time?
Why did we come back? My wife also has a history with the Sievers family, or at least with Mark. He actually, I guess it's
Well, and the
he
question-
dated some people in her family, so they've also known each other since way back.
But the question was, why did you come back the second time?
Because Mark's brother Scott called us the day after and told me what happened. My wife, being the person that she is, insisted that we jump in the car and drive down to help in whatever way the family would need us.
Your Honor, do you all need to take a break? May I proceed?
Yes.
How long did it take for you and Mr. Rodgers did Mr. Rodgers actually join you on the trip to Florida?
Yes.
How long did it take for the 2 of you to come down here? Or to drive down here?
It was like 20 hours.
Did you stop anywhere and spend the night?
No.
Drove straight down?
Yes.
Did Mr. Rodgers bring anything with him for the trip?
When I picked him up, he had a backpack and a cooler with him.
Did you know what was in the backpack and the cooler when you picked him up?
Not at the time.
Did you later learn what was in the backpack and the cooler?
Yes.
What was in them?
The cooler had duct tape, some industrial latex gloves. I know there was something else in there. I can't think of right now, but the backpack had the one-piece jumpsuits that he wears for work.
And one suit or more than one suit?
There's 2.
So he had the 2 jumpsuits and industrial latex gloves, duct tape, and something else that you can't remember.
Yeah.
And I think you told us earlier you arrived early in the morning on the Sunday, the 28th?
Yeah.
What time?
At 6 or close to 6.
6 a.m.?
6 a.m. Yes.
Was it exactly 6 or 6-ish?
I'm not really sure. It was close to it.
And where did you arrive at 6 a.m.?
Yeah, I'm sorry. When you were asking when we got to Lee County, right? Not to Florida. Is that?
Yeah, Lee
Okay,
County.
yes. It was about 6 o'clock when we got off the highway.
Certainly you would have arrived in the state of Florida several hours before that, right?
Yeah.
And did you use any kind of any device or maps so that you could find your way down here, driving down here?
Yes.
What did you use?
A Garmin GPS.
Where did you get that Garmin GPS?
I got it from a friend of mine, Jerry Levinsky.
All right, so Jerry Lubinsky let you have his Garmin,
Yes.
and that's what you used to navigate down here.
Yes.
Did you use it on both trips?
Yes.
When you arrived here in Lee County, where did you go?
The first place that we got off at the Bonita Springs exit. I'm not sure the roads and things down here, but it turned out it was the road that their house was right off of. So they live. So when we got off onto that road, which was the one that would have went to Bonita Beach, the house was right there. So I pointed it out, and then we decided to stop and check the house out. In the planning stages of this, Mark had given me information about the house and just wanted to make sure, verify that.
And when you say we, does that mean you and Jimmy Rodgers?
Yes.
And what information had Mr. Sievers given you about the house?
He had given me the alarm code, the garage door opener, code, information about doors being unlocked. So he had told me that he was going to leave all the doors unlocked. He told me he was going to leave the alarm off. It was having intermittent problems, so sometimes it wasn't arming, but he said he was leave it off. He recommended that we go over the privacy fence. They have a large, high vinyl privacy fence around their yard. So his recommendation was to go over the fence and then come through the side entrance to the garage to gain access to the house.
Did you do that?
No,
Yeah. How did you get access to the house?
I just used the door opener code that he gave me.
Where did you park your rent-a-car?
1 block over, there's a small apartment complex. Parked there and just walked over.
And did you find any exterior doors unlocked?
Yes, everything was exactly the way he told me it would be, except the alarm actually was on.
And were you able to use that code? Were you able to? Your Honor, may we approach?
Okay.
Take a brief recess, let everyone stretch their legs, use the restroom if they need to. Please don't talk about the case among yourselves or with anybody else, and we'll be with you momentarily. If they needed to use the restroom. 10 minutes or 15 or roughly?
10 minutes.
Okay. We'll be in recess.
Is it okay for the witness
Whatever the bailiffs would like to do is fine by me. If he needs to use the restroom, of course, they'll take him down.
Are you okay? You need to use the word?
Yeah, I need to use it.
Let me
Please be seated. Let's not say it loud.
I heard you.
Okay. I'll see you later. Yeah, there's nothing about it.
Oh.
For the record, both assistant state attorneys are present. Mr. Rodgers is present. All four defense counsel and our witnesses on the stand.
Your Honor, defense counsel did provide to the state during the break the requested jury instructions. One is one they have drafted, the other comes from the standard jury instructions on criminal conspiracy. The state does not object to either.
You don't care which one?
It's all one thing, or?
You want them read
I think they
together
want
then?
both, and the state
Okay.
does not. I'm just going to hand to the court, that is exactly what defense counsel handed to the state.
Okay.
Excuse me.
The whole thing? Sorry,
Okay. Is this it?
that's it.
Okay. You guys want me to read this when they come back out, at the end of your direct, at the end of his testimony? What's everybody's pleasure?
What is the pleasure of defense?
I think at the end of the draft.
Okay.
sort of appropriate.
All right. Okay. State's ready.
Yes, sir.
Defense is ready.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Bring him out. You need some water? Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, you said your voice was hoarse, so I figured I'd offer.
I'm in isolation. I don't hardly talk, so when I start talking, I get hoarse.
Jury is present.
Please be seated. I'll ask our jurors again, did you follow my instructions not talk about the case among yourselves with anybody else or look up any of the people or places involved? Even if you did so inadvertently, now would be the time to raise your hand and let me know. For the record, no jurors lifted their hand. State.
Okay, Mr. Wright, I think where we left off, you had arrived at the house. Did you actually get inside the house?
Yes.
And you said Mr. Sievers had given you the alarm code. Was the alarm armed or disarmed when you arrived?
It was armed. He had told me that it wouldn't be, but it was.
And did you get inside the house?
Yes.
And what did you do when you went inside?
Poked around a little bit. Really, it was more for to see what the layout of the house was at. I've been there before, but he hadn't. So we needed to see, kind of the layout of the house. Also needed to check that the fence line. We didn't get into that, but he also said that he had trimmed back some bushes back there so that a person could go over the fence to get into the house rather
You
than
say-
using the garage door.
I'm sorry. When you say he said that he had trimmed back, you're referring to Mr. Sievers?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No problem. All right, so when did you expect Dr. Sievers to come home?
The night before they left, Mark, we had our last communication the night before they left, and he wanted to recap information.
Actually non-responsive.
Sustained.
When did you expect Dr. Sievers to come home?
I expected her to be there at 11:25.
The Sunday night?
Yes.
And why did you expect her home at 11:25 as opposed to any other time that day?
Well, because when Mark gave me the information, he told me that she would be getting in at 11:25. That's the reason I brought that up.
Now, when you say you understood she'd be getting in at 11:25, did you expect that she'd be arriving at the house at 11:25, or that she'd be arriving back in Fort Myers at 11:25?
Yeah, that was a misunderstanding. He was telling me that that's what time she would be home. He built the drive time from the airport to the house into that, and I didn't realize that. I thought that's what time the plane landed.
Okay, and we'll come back to that in a second. So now it's still 6 o'clock-ish in the morning. You got into the house. You said you poked around a little bit. Did you stay at the house?
No, we were only there about 5 minutes.
Okay, and why did you leave?
Well, I knew that his mom was going to be coming to take care of the animals sometime that morning, but I didn't want to be around the house during the daytime.
And when you say his mom, you mean Mark
Yeah.
Sievers' mom?
I'm sorry. Yes, Mark's.
So where did you go?
We went down to the beach, to Bonita Beach. Just kind of walked around a little bit, checking things out. At one time, Mark had showed me that there were some small little lots that are along the beach road there that you can actually park in for free instead of parking at the main beach. We parked in one of those, walked around a little while. I think we actually ended up taking a short nap while we were there, while it was still early and it wasn't too hot.
Okay.
So we drove straight through on the way down.
And who did all the driving?
We took turns.
So you did some driving as well?
Yes.
And so did Mr. Rodgers.
Yes.
And how long did you stay down at the little lots down there in Bonita Beach taking a nap?
Well, there was a lot of moving around that morning, so I may have some of the details mixed up as far as what time slot it was in. But we about 11 o'clock, we went back to Walmart, or not back. We went to Walmart. Jimmy had told me that he wanted to go to Walmart. I think that was about 10:30, but I think about 11 we got to Walmart.
And do you remember where that Walmart was?
I don't.
There was a Walmart somewhere in Southwest Florida.
Yes, we used the Garmin to find it. So
You used you put in Walmart into the Garmin, and you went to the closest Walmart.
yes,
And did you do some shopping at Walmart?
we did.
And let me just ask this question. Y'all didn't come down here for law school graduation.
No,
You didn't come down here to go to any school at all, right?
no.
All right, so what did you buy at Walmart?
Multiple things. I bought a pair of water shoes to wear while we were at the beach. I had old shoes, but they were there and I saw them. They were on sale, so I grabbed them. I know Jimmy bought a pair of shoes. I also got wet wipes, a couple of towels, and some other clothes. I think a shirt, a t-shirt, maybe shorts.
What do two grown men need wet wipes for?
I don't know. Wasn't my purchase.
Oh, Mr. Rodgers bought
Yes,
wet wipes.
yes.
Who paid for all the stuff you got at Walmart?
I rang it out. Mark paid for it, but
You paid for it with the money Mr. Sievers gave you?
yes,
And Mr. Rodgers' wet wipes?
yes.
And
Oh,
Mr.
we
Rodgers' shoes?
yes, we checked out all at once.
So after shopping at Walmart, what did you and Mr. Rodgers do?
We went back down to the beaches.
And what did you do down at the beach?
Walked around. Really, we kind of traveled the whole route in between Bonita Beach and the Fort Myers Pier. That whole area, just kind of stopping along the way at different places. We spent.
It sounds like you're on vacation.
Well, we had that entire day to spend, and my thought was the best place to hide is in a crowd. So we had to spend the day anyway. I brought extra clothes and a towel and things because I knew that we were going to be going to the beach. But we went to the pier and went there. We also got something to eat again. I'm sorry, I left something out. You asked where we went once we left Walmart. We grabbed something to eat, and then we also drove by the office building to check that out.
And when you say the office building, you mean the Sievers Medical Practice?
Yes,
All right, so even though the two of you are hanging around down on Fort Myers Beach, you're not on vacation?
no,
It sounds like you're just killing time.
we were.
And did there come a time when, now that you and Mr. Rodgers go back to the Sievers home?
Yes,
Do you recall what time that was?
I think we got back. I parked in the same parking place that we did that morning. I believe we got back there about 10:30 to the lot.
10:30 p.m.?
Yes.
And what did you do when you got back to the home at 10:30 p.m.?
Well, we walked back over there. That morning when we left, I left the side gate. The gates on their privacy fence only open from the inside. I had left one of the gates unlatched with the intentions of going back into the house that way instead of having to open the garage door. But I guess the wind had blown it shut or something. But so we did end up having to go back in through the garage door again.
And when you say garage door, do you mean like the side door
No.
to the garage or the big door where you drive your vehicles in?
Yeah, the garage door opener door. So
Why did you want to? Why did you want to avoid going in the big garage door?
just the noise. This was the middle of the night, so the light would come on. I just wanted to try to avoid drawing any attention.
Or you were trying to avoid detection by the neighbors?
Yes,
All right, so you went back inside the Sievers home,
yes,
and that's the home on Jarvis Road,
yes,
and that's where they live.
yes.
And what did you do once you got back inside the Sievers home?
We looked around a little bit again, just to make sure nothing had changed. Most of the time we hung out in the garage, but the first thing we did when we got there was we went out the side door into the garage door. The garage has the front doors where the cars come in, and then on the right there's a man door that goes out into the yard, which was left unlocked for us to get into that way. There's also a door that goes between the garage and the house, so just so you know which doors there are. The first thing we did was we went in and came right out the side door. It was really hot in the garage, but we got dressed there, put the suits on,
So when you say you got dressed, you already had on clothes, right?
Yeah, we had regular clothes on. We put on the one piece
Jumpsuits?
yeah, coveralls, I guess is what they would be called. But yeah, we put those on.
Were these, let me ask you a question, these coveralls, were these the coveralls that were in the black backpack you mentioned earlier?
Yes.
Can you describe to the jury how you put those on?
Well, they're one-piece suits, so I mean, just step in the legs and then pull the shoulders and hands up, and then zip it up in the front.
And what else did you do once you put the jumpsuits on?
We put on the rubber latex gloves, and then used the duct tape to tape the arm cuffs, the wrists, and also the ankles,
What was the purpose of doing that?
to try to keep any from leaving any evidence.
Whose idea was it to duct tape the arms and sleeves on the jumpsuits?
Jimmy's.
All right, so now the two of you have suited up. It's now sometime past 10:30 p.m., right?
Yes.
What did you do now?
We were kind of just moving around. We were trying to figure out, kind of decide on what the game plan would be. We talked about a couple different things. We talked about us both being in the garage. Talked about us both being in the house. Talked about one being in the house, one in the garage. But I was actually in the middle of the garage. Mark has a motorcycle that I was looking at that was in the middle of the garage. So
Okay, let me come back to the motorcycle and let me take you back to that side door that you said is on the right side of the garage. How was that side door when you arrived?
well, it
Was it intact?
was unlocked. Yes.
And was it the same way it was when you left?
No, Mark had told me to make it look, or his idea was to make it look like she came home, walked in on an active burglary, and that's how this would go down. So while we were waiting for her to come home, I pried that side door open with something I found in the garage. It was a flat bar, crowbar.
And you pried it open, but did you lock the door back after you pried it open?
No.
You left it unlocked?
Yes.
All right, so we'll go back to the motorcycle. So now at some point, it's after 10:30, you were supposed to make it look like a burglary.
Yes.
Did you go and take anything from the house?
No, not yet. Because there's some variables still as far as like exactly what was going to happen when she got home and how it was going to work. What I would have liked to have seen happen was that it would have been made to look like an accident, something that wasn't real violent. Looked like she slipped and hit her head and drowned in the pool or something like that. So
just to be sure, so that we're clear on what you're saying, when you say what you would have liked to have seen happen, are you saying that you wanted for you and Mr. Rodgers to kill Dr. Sievers?
Objection, Your Honor.
Is that what you're asking?
yes,
What was the objection?
The form of the question.
Overruled.
Answer the question.
You wanted for you and Mr. Rodgers to kill Dr. Sievers and make it look like an accident?
yeah, that was an idea that I had in my head.
And how were the two of you going to pull off making it look? What was the plan to make it look like an accident?
Well, I was gonna somehow render her unconscious. I was hoping to do it with like a rear naked chokehold, which causes somebody to pass out pretty quickly. And then figure out exactly how to do it. There was no definite plan in place. We still thought we had plenty of time to fine tune those actual last plans, but
So during the hours-long drive down from Jefferson County, Missouri, all the way down here to now Bonita Springs, you and Mr. Rodgers hadn't yet come up with a plan for how it was for Dr. Sievers to die?
Well, we had Mark's two plans. It was left up to us exactly how it would happen. It would, as far as which location. There was just not knowing which car she drove, some of that kind of stuff. There was no way to really make a full plan, prior to actually getting there. So
And Mr. Sievers had told you either worked either at the office or at the house.
yes,
And then at some point, the fact that you were at the house now at 10:30 at night and you're suited up in the blue suits, had you ruled out the office?
yes. When we went by there that day, it was too exposed. And when Mark was telling me his plan for it to be at the office, initially he said that he thought that we should use a gun and shoot her, and make it look like a mugging or something.
And using a gun wasn't a good idea,
No,
especially with you being a convicted felon?
yes,
Okay, let's go back to the house then, okay? All right, so back in the house now, you and Mr. Rodgers are suited up. You're all taped up. You're ready to not be contaminated, right?
right,
And you're expecting Dr. Sievers to arrive in Florida at approximately 11:25 p.m.
yes,
And you told us earlier that you were in the garage looking at Mr. Sievers' bike.
yes.
And when you say bike, do you mean bicycle or motorcycle?
Motorcycle,
So Mr. Sievers had a motorcycle in the garage?
yes. I've rode it before, but I was just wasting time waiting.
And what happened while you were standing there looking at the motorcycle?
She came home unexpectedly. The garage door light popped on. The door started coming open.
Where were you standing when the door started opening?
The motorcycle was in the middle of the garage, between the empty bay where she would be pulling in and where the other vehicle was. So I was right in the middle of the garage. The light popped on. It was almost over my head. I just dove for the first thing that I could find. I dove behind where the motorcycle was at. There was a stack of boxes there, but I dove down behind that to keep the headlights from hitting me because of the direction she would be pulling in from.
So as you were expecting that as she pulled her vehicle into the garage, that the headlights would light you up and she'd see you.
She definitely would have seen me. Yeah.
Where was Mr. Rodgers when that garage door started going up? Where was he?
I'm not sure. I wasn't paying any attention because I was looking at the motorcycle.
Was he under the roof of the house somewhere?
Yeah, I knew that he was either in the house or he was behind me somewhere.
You just didn't know exactly where he was?
No.
All right, so the door starts going up, she's coming home, and you said you dove behind the boxes.
Yes.
Did she pull in?
Yes.
What happened when she pulled in?
Well, she was driving the van, the minivan. So she pulled in. I heard a door open, besides the driver's side door. But I'm not sure if it was the back hatch or if it was the sliding door. But I heard a door open. It was on the other side of the van, so I couldn't see it. But from what I heard, a door opened. She pulled out her luggage and pulled it to the front of the van. Instead of taking it on into the house, she just laid it in the floor right at the bottom of the little 2 steps going into the house, which was directly in front of the van, which was almost in front of me.
So, and the vehicle Dr. Sievers was driving, the driver's side of the vehicle was on the opposite side of the vehicle where you were hiding?
Yes.
So when after she pulled in, you were still out of view.
Yes. As she was walking into the house, I was out of view.
So you said she gets out and she puts down her suitcase in the garage. What did you do when she did that?
Well, when I saw that she put the suitcase down and she started to go into the house without it, my concern was that as soon as she walked in the house, she would either set her purse on the washer and dryer was right inside of that little entry area. That she would sit her purse down and turn around to get the luggage. The light was still on where I was positioned at. If she turned around, she'd be looking right at me. The alarm panel is also right there on that next to that door. There's panic buttons on the alarm panels. I panicked. I thought that, if she saw me, that she would either hit the panic button or take off running, and I didn't know where Jimmy was at, so I panicked. I jumped up and I followed her into the house.
Okay, and so let's pause here for a minute. And you mentioned earlier that you'd use some kind of a crowbar or something in the garage to mess with try to make it look like that side door had been pried open. Did you and Mr. Rodgers locate any other tools in the garage?
Yeah, when we first got there, when we were kind of looking around, Mark had a hand tool box, just a small box, but Jimmy had pulled a hammer out of it and kind of made a hammering motion and made a joke about it being destiny.
So Mr. Rodgers picked up a hammer and made a joke about made a hammering motion?
Yes,
Like whose destiny?
Teresa's destiny. Jimmy, one of Jimmy's nicknames, Jimmy the Hammer, is what he's
Okay,
used that name. So
Let's
Okay.
move. Jimmy the Hammer is Jimmy Rodgers.
yes,
Okay, let's move ahead. All right, so were there any other hammers? Were there any other hammers in the garage?
yes. As I started to go into the house, there's a small ice chest just to the right of that door. Had some stuff laying on it. There was another hammer laying on the top of that. It wasn't put there. It was there.
So Mr. Sievers didn't leave the hammers out for you and Mr. Rodgers to use them?
No, not intentionally.
Okay. It was there, it wasn't, you saw an opportunity, so did you pick it up?
I did.
All right, so in this moment now, when you pick up that hammer on that chest, you're following Dr. Sievers into her home?
Yes.
You're behind her?
Yes.
Does she see you?
No.
Do you have any indication at all that she knows that you're behind her?
No. Not going into the house.
So did you actually follow her from the garage into the interior of her home?
I did.
And by this time, you've armed yourself with the hammer.
Yes. I still had planned on using my hands, but I had the hammer also as a backup.
And so you still had planned to try and somehow put her in a chokehold and knock her out?
Yeah, if I was behind her, it would be very easy to put somebody, especially a smaller person, in that hold. The problem happened because
And so were you able to get close enough to her to put her in that chokehold that you wanted to put?
accidentally kicked the dog dish over. Their dog dishes that they have are actually on a stand, so they're off the floor. But it's an obnoxious dish, and it's in the worst place possible not to kick it. So
What happened when you kicked it?
The dishes went flying everywhere. It made a huge noise. It startled her. She started to turn towards me before I had gotten close enough to actually be able to get, to do what I wanted to do.
So when you kicked the dog bowl, your presence in the house became known.
Yes.
And you said Dr. Sievers started to turn towards you.
Yeah.
Did she in fact turn towards you?
She started to turn towards me. I was afraid that if she turned around, she would scratch me or do something to leave evidence. I swung the hammer and I hit her.
When you hit her, did you expect? What was your expectation when you hit her with the hammer?
I expected it to knock her out.
It didn't knock her out, did it?
No.
It's a little more difficult than you thought it would be.
I've never hit anybody with a hammer before.
So, after you hit Dr. Sievers, after she turned around, did she ever realize that you were there?
Yeah, she hadn't turned all the way around when I hit her, so I hit her still from behind, but more on the side.
On the side of her head
Yes.
or the back side of
The
her
back,
head?
the back upper side, yeah, this area. But I hit her. She didn't seem to react to it at all, and
Did she say anything when you hit her?
not when I hit her the first. So
At any point, did you ever make contact with did you and Dr. Sievers ever make eye contact?
yes,
How did she look when you made eye contact with her?
surprised.
All right, so did she just stand there and let you hit her with a hammer?
No.
What did she do?
Well, after I hit her, she finished turning towards me. She put her hands up to fight back, to defend herself.
Did she fight?
Yeah,
You fought for her life?
yeah.
Where was Mr. Rodgers while this is happening?
At that point, I still didn't know.
You couldn't see him?
I didn't see him.
How many times did you hit Dr. Sievers with that hammer?
3.
And when you hit Dr. Sievers with the hammer, did you intend for her to die?
No, I was trying to knock her out and to figure out a better way of doing it. I never in a million years envisioned beating her to death with a hammer.
Well, let's be clear. You were there, suited up, because you wanted her to die, right?
Yes.
And so at some point, did Jimmy reveal his presence to you? Or
Yeah.
Did Mr. Rodgers reveal his presence to you?
Yes.
How did he do that?
He appeared to my right and started hitting her also.
And when Mr. Rodgers appeared, was Dr. Sievers still awake?
She was still standing up.
Was she still alive?
Yes. She had her hands up when I swung the other 2 times, so I'm not really sure how that connected, but she was looking at me through her arms, and she said, "Why?"
She said, "Why?"
Yeah.
To you?
Yes.
And then you said Mr. Rodgers came from somewhere and he started hitting her. What did he do?
Just started hitting her over and over.
How would you describe how he was hitting her?
In a frenzy.
A frenzy? And you, so now you've hit your best friend's wife with a hammer several times, and now your other friend is hitting your best friend's wife with a hammer.
Yes.
And this is because the two of you wanted her dead?
Yes. We came there to kill her.
When Mr. Rodgers started hitting Dr. Sievers in a frenzy, as you described, was she still standing?
Yes.
Was she still fighting for her life?
She still had her hands up, yes.
And so when he starts hitting her now, she's engaged with both of you.
She's still facing me. He was to the side. So,
Were you able to see where he was hitting her with the hammer?
in the head.
And what happened to what did she do after Mr. Rodgers started hitting her in the head with the hammer?
I think she turned more into the kitchen and bent over. It seems like she had a hand on the countertop.
So let me ask you a question about that. You said she bent over. So when you say bent over, was she bent over at the waist
Yes, she was still on her feet, bent over at the waist. Yes.
and was holding herself up on the counter?
I believe that she had a hand on the counter. I'm not absolutely positive of that. It could have been on her knee, but she was holding herself at that angle. So,
What happened at this point?
just kept hitting her.
Kept hitting her?
Yeah,
Who?
Jimmy did.
Oh, you weren't hitting her anymore?
I was still at the point where I was still standing where I was standing when it started.
So if Dr. Sievers turned towards the counter, if you were facing her, and she turned towards the counter, and Mr. Rodgers, how's Mr. Rodgers able to keep hitting her in the back of the head?
He had to go past me.
He got in between you somehow?
Yeah. The way that their kitchen, I don't know if you guys have seen a diagram of the kitchen or not, but when you go into that entryway, it opens up into the kitchen, and there's like a long counter that's a standalone counter, and then I think the sinks and stuff are in that. When I caught up to her, she was just about to the counter, and she turned so that when I hit her, she was backed up to the counter, so she was between me and the counter. That area between the counter and the rest of like the stove and things, cabinets, isn't real wide, so.
And so you told us now she's in between. You said that she's at the counter. Mr. Rodgers has somehow gotten in between you and Dr. Sievers, and he's still hitting her?
Yes.
And did she stay standing the whole time?
No. She may have stumbled or something, but she basically continued to fall all the way to the floor.
And what happened after she fell on the floor?
He continued to hit her.
He continued to hit her?
Yes.
Mr. Rodgers?
Yes.
But you didn't hit Dr. Sievers anymore?
No.
Again, let's make sure that we're all clear. At this point, you still wanted Dr. Sievers dead, right?
Yes.
And did Mr. Rodgers also want her dead?
Yes.
So after she fell on the floor, what happened?
Well, she fell face down and was laying in the floor. And like I said, she continued to hit her.
I'm sorry, I cannot hear the witness.
Can you repeat what you just said, please?
I'm sorry.
I'll ask you to speak up, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sorry about that. After she was down on the floor, he continued to hit her.
And at some point, did Mr. Rodgers stop hitting Dr. Sievers with the hammer?
Yes, I'd ask him to stop a couple of times.
Well,
And he
let me
continued,
just ask you,
but-
how did you ask? It sounds like a pretty terrible scene here. So how do you ask him to stop hitting a woman with a hammer? How did you do that?
I said, that's enough, stop.
Did he stop?
No.
Now, what did the use of the hammer on Dr. Sievers, what effect did that have on your plan to make this look like an accident?
Made it impossible.
Impossible?
Yes.
Okay, so at some point, did Mr. Rodgers stop hitting her?
Yes.
Why did he stop?
I physically went over there and put my hand on him and I said, stop. I physically walked over to the area where he was at and asked him to stop. I mean, put my hand on him.
I mean, you know, I'm going to demonstrate on my trial partner here. Did you say stop? Did you ask him?
Sustained.
Did you gently ask him to stop?
Yes. I was just letting him know I was behind him. He was swinging the hammer up over his head, and I didn't want to get hit. So.
How many hammers did Dr. Sievers get hit with?
2.
What happened to the hammer that you hit her with?
After I had stopped hitting her, I dropped it on the floor
On the floor in the kitchen?
in the kitchen. Yes.
Did you pick it up?
No, I left it there.
You left it at the scene?
Yes.
What happened to the hammer Mr. Rodgers hit Dr. Sievers with?
I don't know.
He didn't drop it on the floor?
I didn't see what he did with it.
And this happened in Bonita Springs?
Yes.
here in Lee County, Florida?
Yes.
And your agreement with Mr. Rodgers to effect the death of Dr. Sievers started in Missouri?
Yes.
And was that agreement still in effect here in Lee County, Florida?
Yes.
After Mr. Rodgers finished hitting, after you and Mr. Rodgers finished hitting Dr. Sievers in the head with a hammer, was she still alive?
No.
She was dead?
Yes.
Okay, so now after Dr. Sievers has, she's expired, she's on the kitchen floor still?
Yes.
Did she die where she lay?
Yes.
You didn't move her from the kitchen?
No.
You didn't kill her somewhere else and then put her in the kitchen?
No. To my knowledge, she was exactly where she was left when the last hit was done. I had actually turned around
And let me ask you a question first, okay? So what about this burglary plan that you said that you and Mr. Rodgers had discussed? Were there some valuables in the home?
Yes.
Did you take any?
As far as I know, nothing was taken. We had
Why not?
well, because of how this happened suddenly, and I thought that there would be time to do it after, to stage it or to actually take something after it was over, and because of how it ended, that didn't happen.
So after Dr. Sievers died on the kitchen floor, did you stay in the house?
No.
You
No.
left?
Yes.
What about Mr. Rodgers? Did he stay in the house?
He wasn't very far behind me.
The two of you left?
Yeah.
And when you left the house, how did you exit the house?
We went out through the garage door between the house and exactly the way we came in.
The one that you pried open?
Yes. Yeah. We went out from the kitchen hallway into the garage, and then went across the garage and went out that side door that I had pried.
What happened to the? Did you keep those jumpsuits and the duct tape that you had on? Did you keep that on?
No, we took that stuff off right outside that door, which is the same place it went on at.
Other than the jumpsuits and the duct tape, did you have anything else on to keep you from contaminating the scene or keep the scene from contaminating you?
I had a hat on. I think we both had hats on.
And when you took the jumpsuits off, did you leave them at the scene?
No,
What did you do with them?
they went back in the backpack.
And did you stay at the scene or did you leave?
We left. Like I
Where did
said,
you go?
back to the car, and then got back on the highway to come home.
What happened to the blue jumpsuits?
We stopped at a rest stop on the way back. I don't know which one it was, but we stopped at a truck stop and cleaned out the car. The suits were thrown. I threw my stuff away. He threw his stuff away.
Do you know whether or not Mr. Rodgers threw away his blue jumpsuit?
I thought that he did.
Okay, did you throw them away in the same garbage, or where did you throw them away?
Well, on the truck, I went to the truck. It was a bigger rest stop where there's like trucks to the right and cars to the left. on the truck side there were several large trash cans. So things got thrown away in separate cans so that it wasn't all in one place.
So you threw your jumpsuit into a can at a truck stop,
Yes, along with trash from the car.
and you expected that Mr. Rodgers threw away his suit and other items in a different can.
Yeah, he threw things away. I thought that was, that was part of it.
Did you actually see him throw away his blue suit?
I did not.
And did you then start the drive home?
Yes,
Did you drive nonstop?
pretty much.
Did you ever stop for gas?
Yeah, that's what we stopped for gas. We stopped to get food, things like that. But there was no fun stops.
Do you recall stopping at a racetrack up in, try not to get these cities mixed up, Brooksville or Bushnell?
Yes.
Were you able to get gas at the racetrack?
No. That's the only reason I remember it is because the sign was all lit up, but when we got off the exit and tried to get gas, we could see people in there, but they never turned the pump on. And so Jimmy actually walked up to the window to try to, I thought maybe, well, we got to prepay it at the window. Maybe the pump didn't work. But he went up to the window to tell him to turn the pump on, and they told him that they were closed.
Was this late at night or early in the morning?
Yeah, it was, well, I'm sure that it was, I don't know the time. It would have been late night or early morning, like somewhere in there.
So even though you couldn't get gas at the racetrack, you still need gas?
Yes,
You went to another gas station?
yes.
Was that a Shell station?
I can't remember.
Or you went to another station?
We used the Garmin to say, take me to the next, nearest state gas. So that's how we found the racetrack as well. But
So you did a search in the Garmin. The Garmin showed you a racetrack, so you went to it, but it was closed.
right,
And you asked for another station, and then you went to the next station.
yes,
And did you get gas there?
yes,
And after that, you came home?
yes.
Let's talk about phones. You told us you had a regular phone, your regular personal phone.
Yes.
Did you bring that with you to Florida?
No, I left it in St. Louis with my
Why'd
wife
you leave it why'd you leave it at home?
because I didn't want it to be. I didn't want it to be picked up down here. I also wanted it in St. Louis, so if somebody called me, that it would show that, the tower would show that it was in that location.
You said you bought that prepaid phone at the Walmart up there. Did you bring that one with you?
Yes,
And you had it on?
yes. Some of the time.
You turned it off at some of the time also?
Yeah.
Did you give Mr. Rodgers any instructions about his phone?
Well, before we left, not like when I picked him up, but before we came down, I had told him not to bring his phone.
Did he follow that instruction?
No.
Brought it with him?
Yes.
At any point, did Mr. Rodgers operate that Garmin unit?
Yeah, I mean, whoever wasn't driving was kind of picking it. The Garmin's pretty simple to use.
And when he was operating the Garmin unit, did he also have his phone?
Yes.
Did you ever see him connect the phone to the Garmin unit in any way?
I remember when that happened. I don't remember the exact how it came about, but I remember I didn't know how to do it, to tell him how to do it, but it's on the screen. It explains it. So we figured it out.
So Mr. Rodgers connected his phone to the Garmin unit?
Yeah. The reason for that was that if it's hooked to a cell phone, it has some additional abilities for like not traffic, because it had that built into it, but I think like accidents, and I think one of the apps even shows you where the police are at or something. It was I was really just playing with it.
Did you ever get paid your $100,000?
No.
Did you ever tell Mr. Rodgers, well, was there ever an agreement between you and Mr. Rodgers about if he was going to get paid and how much?
Yeah, we it was kind of a loose agreement, but basically we it was about 10,000 is what he agreed would be okay. The reason I actually planned to split with him whatever cash it was. Mark's creative. I didn't know because we didn't have an exact agreement on how that was going to be paid, but I could see Mark doing something like, well, he'll buy me a house or something and then and give me 20,000 in cash. So I didn't want to commit more to Jimmy than what I knew that I could personally cover.
So when your friend, Mr. Sievers, promised to pay $100,000 for the death of his wife, did you believe he would pay you?
Yes. Yeah, I don't have any doubts.
And then when you made a loose agreement to share some of that money with Mr. Rodgers, did you intend to keep your word to him?
Yes, absolutely. When we were talking about the money and getting paid, Jimmy had made a comment about if Mark didn't pay us that he would kill him. So, I mean,
Mr. Rodgers,
That's,
Sustained.
I would ask for the,
I'll instruct the jury to ignore the answer that was given and to disregard it.
the person you identified earlier as Jimmy or Jimmy the Hammer or Jimmy Rodgers, do you see that person sitting in court today?
yes. Yes, I do.
Please point to that person and identify him by an article of clothing he's wearing.
The dark suit, striped tie, next to the other guy with the younger man with the glasses.
The younger man with the glasses wearing a striped tie?
Yes.
I see two younger men with glasses wearing striped ties. I'll tell you what, Miss Fitzgeorge is sitting here right next to me. How many people over is he?
2.
All right. May the record reflect that the witness has identified Jimmy Ray Rodgers.
We'll let the record so reflect.
Turn to the witness.
The state has alleged a conspiracy. The conspiracy itself and each member's participation in it must be established by independent evidence. To prove the crime of criminal conspiracy, the state must prove the following 2 elements beyond a reasonable doubt. 1, the intent of Jimmy Rodgers was that the offense of first-degree murder would be committed. And 2, in order to carry out the intent, Jimmy Rodgers agreed, conspired, combined, or confederated with Curtis Wright and Mark Sievers to cause first-degree murder to be committed either by them or one of them or by some other person. It is not necessary that the agreement, conspiracy, combination, or confederation to commit first-degree murder be expressed in any particular words or that the words pass between the conspirators. It is not necessary that the defendant do any act in furtherance of the offense conspired. Have both sides approach for a moment. I expect the cross of this witness to probably be lengthy, but I will leave it to the jurors. If you'd like to complete that tonight, we can keep going. If not, we can just come back tomorrow morning and continue. We will have to come back tomorrow morning irregardless. Do you want me to give you guys a moment to talk? Tell you what, I'm going to let you guys go back to the jury room, talk for a moment about it, and then come back and let us know what you'd like to do.